Good evening. It is Monday, June the 13th, 2014. It's 7:05, Madam Clerk. We are in council chambers for the continuation of Special General Committee meeting with respect to the 2014 operating budget. I need a motion to resume, please. Councillor Abel, thank you. Second. Councillor Peary, all in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Thank you very much. If I could also please have a motion to receive the new item, which is a memo from Mr. Elliott with respect to information requested by committee. So that would be, we would receive and just refer that to the particular items, Madam Clerk. So receive and refer. Councillor Thompson, Peary, all in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Thank you very much. We'll get underway, Council, and we're going to start with Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey will do his presentation, and then we'll go into the blue sheets. Did you already do your presentation, sir? In that case.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, but I wouldn't mind just doing a little overview. There's a couple of changes.
I was so riveted on Saturday, I guess.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I did my presentation, day before yesterday, I apologize, Saturday, and there has been some updates and information with regards to that as a result of some discussions that took place on Saturday. In the presentation, and I'll go to the pages that it impacts, you'll notice that in the base pressures, we have identified closure of the Aurora Family Leisure Complex as an impact of $262,700 on our budget. In fact, during the Treasurer's presentation, if you recall, this is a non-recurring cost, and this cost has been recommended that it be offset in the Stabilization Reserve Fund. So it should not actually be shown in this budget. It will be the monies will be allocated from this in the Rate Stabilization Fund, and so the bottom line on the department budget will vary in the amount of $262,700. You'll also notice the other two base pressures, which are salaries and elimination of e-play. And if we go to the bottom line here, if we take out the $262,700 from the $2,376,000 and then deal with the base pressures, the difference between the 2013 budget and the 2014 budget is about $3,000. That's the good news. The bad news is we missed something on Saturday as well that I wanted to make you aware of, and that is in the seniors budget. By error, we missed allocating part-time salaries, and so we needed to add another $19,000 into the seniors fund. So on your blue sheets, those numbers need to increase by $19,000. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't ready when Mr. Downey started. Could you tell me what page the first addition was on? Or the first subtraction of $3,000?
Certainly. If just doing the math, if you take a look at that page, the difference between the 2013 budget and 2014 budget is $371,735. If you take out $262,700, which is the amount of money for the Aurora Family Leisure Complex, it leaves you with a difference of $109,000. If you add the two base pressures, which are salaries and benefits, and the elimination of e-play, which was a council directive, that adds up to $106,000. So the difference between the two is $3,000.
Thank you.
That would have been page 6 in the overview, Council. Thank you, Mr. Downey.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Microphone, please.
I noticed the elimination, because council directed you to eliminate the $22,600 revenue from the e-play. It was my impression that that decision was made more or less because the people enjoying that service were caught unawares. And we hadn't given them any notice that there was going to be a fee charged for the e-play. And I'm wondering if council is of a mind to change that decision, because I think it's a huge asset, a huge benefit to people who are able to use it and not have to line up and wait and see if there's a space for their child in whatever program. I think they should pay for it. I think if a project, if a service is well received and worth having, then they should be willing to pay for it. And it's $22,600 that we don't need to forego. I don't know if anybody else has...
Well, I certainly remember lots of robust discussion around this when it first came up.
Right.
Mr. Elliott, is this in your blue pages at all? I'm sorry, Mr. Downey. Thank you very much. Is this in your blue pages, sir?
Through Mr. Mayor, no. But if I might, e-play was a very robust discussion. It was actually a discussion on two separate reports. The first report, Councillor Buck is correct. There was some objection to the notification, or the lack thereof, I should say, with regards to e-play. And we came back to council recommending that we no longer charge the fee and give a grace period. And we did that, and with the full notification that residents were going to be aware of the fee being charged. Subsequent to that, then, there was another report to council, and we recommended that the fee be eliminated completely, and council concurred.
Councillor?
If I'm the only one that thinks we should review that decision, then no point.
Well, I would think probably, Councillor Buck, maybe the best way to proceed would for you to put an amendment on the floor that we add this to Mr. Downey's revenue line. Second it and see if it gets seconded, and then see what council's will is. So first of all, Linda, if you could just put the main motion up for Mr. Downey, and then Councillor Buck can carry on with her amendment. So if someone would just put the main motion on the floor for me, please. Councillor Perry, Councillor Gardner, thank you. Councillor Buck, do you want to start that off then with your amendment with respect to the e-play?
I would move that recommendation be amended to require users of the e-play to pay a fee.
Is there a second for that? Councillor? Sir,
okay.
But that's, appreciate you bringing that forward. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, I was a little confused on Saturday under the key performance indicators about the first one about the number of acres of active parkland per capita. And I'm not sure, and maybe Mr. Garby can help. The Leslie Street lands, I checked, have been declared employment lands for many years. So was that double counted in our parkland tally as well? I'm not sure how minus the Leslie Street lands comes to this decreased acreage of parkland, because as far as I know, it hasn't been parkland, I don't know, since before I was on council, maybe.
Mr. Downey, there was, you did give us an explanation on Saturday, but obviously there's still a bit of confusion. Maybe you can give us a bit of history on this as well.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The town purchased Leslie Street in 2000, 89 acres of parkland. It was purchased for parkland purposes. In fact, there were plans identified in the purchase of how we might put facilities within that plan. It was identified within the inventory of our parkland until it became under development, and that was in 2012 when we commenced development of that site. And at that point, we then took it out of our inventory, and it had an impact with regards to the acreage per capita. We've also experienced, of course, a growth over a period of time as well, but the main focus was the removal of that 89 acres, and that was actually an item that was identified within the Parks and Recreation Master Plan when we did that back in 2009.
So, Mr. Downey, if it came out in 2012, why would it not have been reflected in the 2012 result as opposed to the 2013 result?
And that's a fair question, Mr. Mayor. It could have easily been shown in 2012 as well as 2013. We just want to make sure we have accurate numbers for council at this point with regards to the acres of parkland per capita. And this could have easily been shown in 2012 as a number, and then that same number would have been carried in 2013. It will elevate, however, with the bringing on of 2C lands. A great amount of parkland has been obtained within 2C, and so when that comes on board, that number will increase. However, be slightly offset with the additional population.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I do know that land was originally purchased for parkland, and then when we bought the Stewart Burnett area, because it was serviced, we decided to move the rec facility there. I find it almost alarming that we were calling it parkland when we've been discussing, certainly in my first two councils and this council, about using this for employment land. And when we had our little tour over there, when Councillor Buck suggested that maybe we could use some of that land for rec, we had a discussion around this table, and we said, no, it's our employment land. It's valuable employment land. We can't use it for recreation land. So have we been double counting this, through you to Mr. Garby? This makes absolutely no sense to me.
Mr. Garby?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't say that we were double counting it. Mr. Downey's explained that it could have easily been shown in 2012, and perhaps even in 2011 it could have been shown because we listed the property actively for sale for employment uses. So, as Mr. Downey said, the result today, the 2013 result, is accurate, accurate for that purpose. But it could have easily been shown back to 2010 or 11.
Thank you. And again, I find this very strange, because in the council of 2000, in 2006 to 2010, we had it for sale as employment land.
Okay, Councillor Gardner, that's fine. We note your concerns, but this is not really affecting the 2014
Fine.
budget.
There's something wrong with this.
We appreciate your concerns. Other discussions with respect to Mr. Downey's budget? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, if you could just clarify a few things. I'm in the blue sheets, page 12-3. So I'm looking at the line for recreational services admin. The 2012 actuals was 197. We budgeted for 425. The actuals for 2013 were 357, so even it was underspent on their budget, but yet for 2014 you're still requesting actually an increase in the budget up to 444. I guess, why was it underspent, and why do you feel the need to increase it?
Mr. Downey?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're going to find some inconsistencies with regards to some of the blue numbers, and I do my very best to explain some of those issues. With regard specifically to recreation services admin, the budget originally allocated funding for a supervisor. However, the actual came in lower because we did not have that supervisor in place for a long period of time in 2013, and then did and then don't. So we do plan on dealing with that element in 2014, which is the reason you see the variation between the actual and the estimate. Yes, between the adjusted and the actual estimate, that therefore the budget is going up mainly because of administration salaries and benefits.
Councillor?
And then my other question on 12.7, just in the top box where there are other expenditures. So the budget estimate, or the budget for 2013 was quite high. You came in, actual was much lower. 2014, you've reduced it. But it's interesting as we look outwards. The budget for 2014 is 890. Budget for 2015 is 890. But then it starts to decline. So I'm wondering, why do we have an increase in the 14 and 15 outlook years, but yet then it starts to taper off again?
Mr. Downey?
I apologize. You're looking at the top of the page?
This continuity here, 850 drops from here to here.
Okay.
That's the second line from the top, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, in 2015, it goes up, and the reason for that is we're going to be asking for additional staff resources. Oh, I'm sorry, that's shown in personnel. I apologize. I'll have to take a look at the budget. Hold on one second, please.
If I may, my comment really is just that, I would, expect to see a slight increase year over year with regards to expenditures. And they seem fairly stable for this particular department, but yet you have those two increases in 2014, 2015, and then it returns back to $50,000 less. And so I'm just wondering, is there something particular we're doing that increases those expenditures over those 2 years on a short-term basis and then declines?
Through Mr. Mayor, nothing comes to mind right away. It's certainly something I can report back on, but nothing comes to mind right away.
In terms of, and now that we have, so just so I understand that latest information in terms of removing, I think we removed 245. Is it 262 from the loss of income from the Aurora Family Leisure Complex. So we removed that from the budget, and we are accounting for it through stabilization.
Correct. That's my understanding is from Saturday's presentation.
Okay, so could you show me where that comes into? Is that on the 2014 budget highlights? And I'm sure I have it on my screen, and again, there's no page numbers on the screen, but it's under, I assume it's under revenues, under total parks and recreation services, and it's for 2014 draft budget, it's $5,149,000. Is that where I would find that 200 and whatever the amount, 265?
262.7.
Let me write it down.
Burned into my mind.
262. Is that where I would find that?
The 262, I'm sorry, through Mr. Mayor, the 262.7 is a result of expenditure savings through the department related to this of $146,400, and then revenue shortfalls through the department of $409,100, which is where I came to with the number 262. So you're going to find that as an impact in fitness programs, aquatics programs, primarily.
But is it part of that grand total number? Let me see if I can find it in there. 12, I think it's 12.3 at the top, under revenues. That 5,149,300, is that where that amount, I would find that, and we're going to be reducing that amount?
You're going to be reducing revenues.
Yeah. So instead of 5 million,
by $409,100. Okay, and you're going to, so that number is going to go up, but the expenditures is going to go down by $146,400.
so we're reducing revenue by 409,
100, correct.
100, and that's as a result of it being closed for a year.
Correct.
And we're going to add back 146,400. Help me out with that one.
In reduced expenditures.
In reduced expenditures.
Right.
Got it. Which equals 262.
Correct.
And that I can find again in that. Is it in that five? The total in that 5,149,300 on top of 12-3 under revenue?
No.
Well, there's the 409.
The 409 is in
the
there.
The 409 is part of that. Okay, so previously, before that move of the 262, which is now going to be taken care of out of the stabilization fund, when I compare the 2014 draft budget to the actual, it was somewhere around $500,000. So at least now I understand 262,000 of where that 500,000 came from. Okay. And there's obviously less of an impact to it. It's about 100, just under 140,000 when I'm comparing actuals, projected actuals, estimated actuals, to the 2014 draft budget. Is there anything else that stands out that would, or is it bits and pieces here and there that would equal that, the difference in the actuals compared to the 2014 budget?
Yeah, it is. It's spread out throughout. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. It's spread out throughout the departmental budget.
Okay. And I don't know if, I mean, it's slightly related, and it's to perhaps Mr. Elliott in terms of the tax rate stabilization fund. And I know it's in your report that just to confirm what the balance is on there, it's in and around 2.2 million. And this budget is anticipating drawing from it around 710,000. We got fire, we got this now 262, and we have.
Sorry, there is no draw on the fire. It's just SUPs and just the AFLC. So it's just the two components.
2013 we drew
140
for fire.
For fire, and this year we are not.
But
we're done.
So no, fire's done. So we are drawing
262.
262 and the 325.
That's correct.
For
those
subs.
two items. Yeah.
Just give me 1 second. I thought there was another one, but I'm sure you're right.
Well, I'm not sure because
sec.
I don't know whether that has the thought that maybe they don't need it because of the operations center. It's operating materials, so I'm not sure if that's, so I want to check. So.
Councillor, should we come back?
No, I think I found it. In your report, it speaks to, it's under fire services. Maybe just help me understand that last statement. It has to do with stabilization reserve. This was the third and final year of the 3-year planned phase-in of these costs. The reduction in stabilization support represents a new tax rate pressure of 0.42 or 140,200.
Okay, Councillor, with respect, that's Mr. Elliott's budget. We should be sticking with parks right now. We can come back to that, but let's finish up Mr. Elliott, Mr. Downey's budget first, if we may.
Yeah, I was just trying, because we added into the stabilization fund this new 262. I was trying to get a balance of what.
Fair enough, but that's when we come to Mr. Elliott's budget. We can
it's a quick
there.
answer, Mr. Mayor, and that's my last one.
Do you have a quick answer, Mr. Elliott?
The statement that you just read in my report is suggesting that last year we drew from stabilization and offset an otherwise amount of tax pressure, and this year we are not, and so that not doing so this year becomes a tax rate pressure in this year. So we're not drawing, and that becomes a tax rate pressure this year.
So it's a tax rate pressure because we want to keep it at a similar level?
No, we wanted to phase that fire crew in for the final step this year. And so that's the piece that's going onto the tax rate this year.
Okay, I understand that.
We can get to it.
That's fine. I'll expand it further. That's fine.
Do you have anything on parks?
That's it for now.
Councillor Buck, Councillor Ballard. Microphone, please.
Page 12-2.
2?
There's a table, key performance measures, referring to capacity. I think it's capacity of use. And it refers to the ice time, which is utilized 89%. I guess that's, and prime versus non-prime, it's covering our all our ice facilities. And then the next one is recreation registered program utilization rates, and it was 55% in 2013 and anticipated will be 55% in 2014. And does that mean that the facilities are 45% not utilized?
Mr. Downey, please.
Through Mr. Mayor, we use this as a key performance indicator, as a metrics, in order to assist us in determining whether or not we are running programs that are being well received and are maximizing our opportunities with our facilities. We have approximately 24,000 registered program spaces per year. And this means that of those 24,000, a little over half of them are booked. So a little over half of them are actually attended. So if you are, we have many programs and some don't run at all. We have too few registrants. They don't meet the threshold. However, those spaces are available. So no, they drop off, and they're part of that 45% that aren't filled. We also know we have programs that are fully utilized and a waiting list associated with them. So we use this information to assist us in developing programs that are going to address those areas where we have waiting lists and start dropping off some of those programs that we know historically haven't been successful. So we hope that number climbs, and you'll notice there's a climb each year. with regards to the programming. However, in 2014, we have a number of changes happening in the department, particularly with the closure of the Family Leisure Complex and some of the challenges we have with regards to facility space. And so we're not indicating that there'll be an increase, but there may very well be. It's a metrics that we'll be able to provide to council next year. But it is something that we see climbing each year, and we hope to continue that trend.
Councillor?
The reason I ask this question, Mr. Mayor, and I ask it every year, it's easy to skim over the recreation budget because it's such a big moneymaker. There's so much revenue coming in. And used to always be the principle was that the revenue we made would be used to reduce user costs, to make the facilities more accessible to everybody in town. Nobody would be unable to play a sport in Aurora because they couldn't afford the fee. And I can't help feeling that there are more and more families that are not able to afford to get their kids into these programs, and I think it's very important that they should be in these programs. So my question is, if we're only using it 55%, if the facilities or the registered spaces, and I know it's a blanket percentage, are only being utilized 55%, and you don't expect them to be utilized anymore in 2014, and yet are we expecting an increased population in 2014? We don't. Yeah. So the question that comes to my mind are, how would you know that you're accommodating all the kids in town, no matter whether or not they can afford? I know you've told me before that we have policies that take care of those kids that their families can't afford the fees. How would you know if that number is growing, and what action would you take in reaction to that knowledge?
Mr. Downey?
To Mr. Mayor,
tough question.
It is a tough question. So we do have some subsidization programs available. In fact, many of the sports groups in town also have subsidization programs particular to their sport, whether it be soccer or ball or whatever. We also have partnership with Canadian Tire on their Jumpstart program, and the regional municipality is also available to us to offer subsidization for people who have difficulty accessing our programs. This has more to do with how well our programs are being utilized and how well they're being received. We can never reach 100%. It's just not possible because that would mean that we'd run too few programs and too long a waiting list. We know we always have to make sure that there's some capacity, and we're running some programs that might be 3/4 full, but it's a program that we think is valuable, and it's still adding money back into the coffers of the municipality, but it's going to show us a 75% rate. There's no reason to release that program because it's only at 75%. The pricing policy that we have in place is a policy that is reviewed on an ongoing basis. In fact, the Parks and Recreation the Parks and Recreation Committee is going to be reviewing that this year. And with that, we have identified what we feel are appropriate subsidization rates for particular programs. That will be reviewed by a committee. There will be recommendations made to council, as it was previously, and those programs are available to Aurora residents and on a priority basis. So if spaces are available, they are given to Aurora residents.
Thank you.
Councillor?
I have another question, Mr. Mayor. 2 pages over, 12.6. And it's the last point, it's the last of a list of increased pressures facing the Parks Division. And it refers to increasing staff loo time and vacation entitlements as per QP agreement and corporate policy are impacting on availability of human resources. Are you saying, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, that because of increasing staff loo time and vacations, we have less man-hours available to operate the Parks and Recreation Services Department? And this staff loo time, I'm particularly interested in that because I had always understood that the employment of seasonal and part-time employees meant that loo time wasn't a problem. They worked on holidays and they didn't get paid extra for working on holidays, and it meant that the full-time staff didn't work on holidays and didn't require loo time, therefore. Is that convoluted enough for you, Mr. Dunn?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I understood it perfectly. First of all, the seasonal and summer students are not part of the QP agreement, so this doesn't impact those staff. This is as a result of recent negotiations with QP. Full-time staff or staff that are under the QP agreement are entitled to a certain number of vacation days, as well as a loo time policy that is creating some pressures. You will see that in our overtime budget. We monitor that quite closely, and that helps us either determine how we might modify our shifts in order to reduce the loo time, or come forward to council requesting additional staff resources in order to address that. But the point behind this concern is that you are correct with your first statement. We have more time off for those full-time staff, which means that there's fewer hours on the job and more work to be done.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, is the increased vacation entitlement due to the QP agreement? How were the vacations increased through the QP agreement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the QP agreement and vacation entitlement, the QP staff were originally under a different vacation entitlement schedule than the non-union staff, and we have now brought both the union and the non-union staff under the same vacation entitlement schedule.
So what's the percentage of QP members and non-QP members in your department?
The department has 45 staff, and I believe 19 of them are QP, so somewhere around a third.
Thank you.
Councillor Ballard.
Thank you. Fairly straightforward question. On page 2, typical month ice time rental during peak season. Can you tell me, would you know the financial impact of the St. Andrews College facility in terms of them then not renting from us?
To you, Mr. Mayor, it will have an impact. Is not quite as great as them leaving and us not being able to fill those hours. We can easily fill the prime time hours. We have people waiting for that, so that's not an issue. It's the non-prime hours that are a little more difficult. They are also paid out at a lower rate because they're non-prime time hours. But I've had discussions with St. Andrews. There doesn't seem to be any major concern that we're going to be losing a substantial amount of hours at this point. But they're not up and operating yet, and so I can't talk with certainty that it won't have a great impact. But I don't see that coming down the road.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson? I'm sorry, Councillor Humphreys? Well, Councillor Thompson's spoken once, so I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you've got a couple of new items here that you're asking for, and I absolutely support the conversion to full-time for part-time for special events support. The only one I have a problem with, and I had it during our conversation earlier, was the special events admissions. I'm not comfortable with that, and I don't want to include it in this year's budget, but I will just leave that for a minute and just throw it out there.
I've got, for second speakers, I've got Councillor Gartner, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Mr. Downey, on page 12-2, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey. When we potentially change that from a part-time person to a full-time person in special events, that's, according to the chart, that's not going to change the cost per capita? Or maybe I'm not understanding. A community of special event operating costs per capita, does that include salaries?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does. So it's simple math with regards to the special events budget, the overall budget, divided by the population of Aurora. So that's how that's tracked.
So if we change that half-time person to a full-time person, will we be changing that number? Or why aren't we changing that number?
Well, bear with me 1 second, please. Yeah. So the 2013 budget for special events was $242,000. We are looking at a request of $271,000, so there'll be $30,000 difference between this year and next year within special events. And so, yes, that number will go up.
Thank you. It's
well, I shouldn't say that so quickly. It might not, because we'll have more people in town. So it's math again. So if we increased, it will be offset by the number of people that are in town as well. So we'll have to find out.
Thank you. We've already, I believe, according to your budget sheets, it shows that person already added in part-time to full-time. That's why I was confused why this number one's okay. So it may change, but we don't know. Thank you. So we'll have to wait and see. Thank you. All of the contracted service providers who do the fitness classes for us, are they included? Are their expenses in any way included in personnel costs, and their income included, or their revenue included in our budgets?
Mr. Downey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes and no. The contract staff within fitness can be employed in two different ways with regards to the provision of their services. They can be an independent contractor, and they have to provide certain conditions or meet certain conditions in order to be an independent contractor, or they can be identified as a part-time staff and will be paid within the personnel costs of a part-time staff. So independent contractors can be either part-time staff or contracts.
Do independent I'm sorry, I should know this, but I can't remember. Do independent contractors pay us to use our facility and then keep the money from their students?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, all revenue is the municipalities. So the programs are registered, the fees are paid to the municipality, and we then pay the contractor the fee identified within their contract.
But we don't include their fee within our budget, our personnel budget.
Oh, yes, we do.
We do.
If they are a part-timer, it's in the part-time budget. If they're a contract, it's in the contract section.
Okay, so it's somewhere in here.
Correct.
Thank you. And I noticed that all of the, did we put any staff that were working at the Aurora Family Leisure Complex on hold, or did we take all the staff that was working at that facility and move them over to the SARC?
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Mayor, we did a couple of things. First of all, we had one employee retire, so we're not filling that position. So we are holding off adding any new complement, full-time complement to that. The part-time staff have had their hours reduced as a result of the move. And so that's where you see some of those expenditures that I was talking to Councillor Gallo about with regards to the move. We are looking at reduced expenditures as a result of not filling positions or reducing part-time hours. The other hours, the other staff are over at the desk at the SARC. It's a much busier desk now than it was before. So we have additional staff at that desk in order to deal with the additional volume.
We don't have any additional phones. Just leave that
I'll
one.
look to my left for that.
Just leave that one. On page 12, under revenues, we get the extra $50,000 for ground maintenance for the from the region of York. But I think I read somewhere in here that we're being stressed, our staff is being stressed by having too much work. Did I get that right?
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Mayor, we've identified it as a forecasted pressure. So that's one of the reasons that if you take a look at the bottom of page 12.2, you'll notice that we are looking at an additional staff request in 2015 and another additional staff request in 2016. So we wanted to give Council an indication that we are beginning to meet some thresholds that are concerning us and that we would like to be able to address those with some additional staff resources, but not this year.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. Last question. You said retention is 60% of the fitness members. I noticed there's a lot of people over at the SARC who are just standing around watching their children, and some suggestions have been made that maybe we could put some better signage up there, maybe closer to the front of the building, that might attract some people to come and use that exercise facility. Is that a possibility? And the same thing, I think the spinning class is underutilized. Can we do anything to help us out to bring in more revenue that, in light of the leisure complex being closed?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a great suggestion, and I'm happy to do that. It's certainly in our business plan that we had presented to Council on the Club Aurora. We want to go out and actively market, so I'll certainly bring that to staff's attention, and perhaps we can put some information at the desk or on the reader boards that are inside the facility. I think that's a good idea, bringing attention to that. With regards to revenues, we are actually in a higher revenue position this year than we were last year, so I think some of our marketing techniques are working. So we believe that we are doing our best to increase those revenue opportunities or maximize those revenue opportunities. I haven't heard from staff that the CycleFit rooms or the CycleFit classes are being underutilized, but that's something I can certainly look at. Perhaps that's an issue related to time that we provide those classes. I'm not quite sure.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I've got Councillor Townsend. We'll go to Councillor Perry.
You already spoken? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Downey. Just following up on those KPIs on page 12-2. Those are net operating costs for both recreational programs and special events, I would assume, since recreational programs, I'm sure, cost more than $200,000 a year.
That's correct.
Thank you. One of the things that we did in 2013 was initiate a service level review. And part of the reason was to do it prior to the budget so that we can utilize some of that information in our budget discussions. What came out of that service level review was a bit of a conversation around your department and some of the comparator costs. It was pointed out that on a per capita basis, some of those criteria were higher than comparators, but you could argue that perhaps you provide better service or more services. So I'm interested to know, out of those discussions, what are you trying to gain out of it and implement into the budget for 2014?
Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Parks and Recreation Committee, we've had discussions with regards to capturing the ongoing costs of the provision of programs. It's somewhat complicated. We have not only our direct and non-direct costs within the Parks and Recreation Department, but we have the same thing within the IAS Department for the provision of operations and facilities. So we are doing our best to try to capture those costs and find out whether or not those costs are appropriate based on the fees that we are charging, making comparators of those fees and those costs with other municipalities within York Region as well as outside of York Region, which is the process that we went through in 2009, I believe, when we did it last. And with that, we also monitor the marketing of our programs. It's one of the reasons that, as I spoke earlier with Councillor Buck, we are looking at our utilization rates to make sure that our programs are being properly utilized. And so we're doing our best to try to capture the costs, identify where our issues are, and addressing those and making recommendations to Council, and you're going to be seeing those within the next 6 months or so.
I think one of the other areas that was identified in the service level review revolved around the cost of maintaining our parks and the maintenance costs associated with it on a per-person basis. Are some of those performance measures going to come forward more often from our budgetary discussions so we can start seeing either A, whether those costs are reasonable, or B, that they are starting to decline as we improve?
Mr. Downey.
Through Mr. Mayor, some interesting numbers came out of the service level review with regards to parks. It was noted that we have a higher rate of contract services provided from parks than almost any other comparator. So the thought that the private sector can come in and perhaps be more efficient or provide the service cheaper may or may not be so, and it's something we need to look at. We believe that majority of our services that we're providing are at as low a cost as we can provide. Now, that being said, we haven't had an opportunity to go back and take a look at what those other municipalities are actually charging and how they compare. I want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, and that's not always easily done because each municipality operates differently and places different costs within their matrix in order to come up with their costs. And we're finding that whenever we even do the provincial standards, the MPNP, to figure out whether or not we're matching up with Sarnia or Sudbury or Oakville or somebody else. So it's always been a challenge. We're looking internally as much as we possibly can to find out where some cost measures will be, but we haven't taken any steps as a result of the service level review to look at modifications of our operation at this point.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Downey. I said it then and again, I think that while I wasn't necessarily pleased with all that it had to say. I just don't think we should lose sight of it, and I think we should continue to challenge administration to follow up on some of the suggestions, keep bringing that information back for us, because we engaged in it for a purpose, and I'd hate to just see it collect dust on the shelf.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 12.3 at the bottom of the page. Reception registration services. They're going at $50,000 between this year and last year. Due to the breakdown, I'm not sure if there's an opportunity to have saved money through the customer service switch that we've recently done. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey, I guess first if you could sort of break down the cost between how much of that is reception, how much of that is registration. Is it all desk, or is some of it for the telephones as well, if that's possible?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the first cost, the first cost that's moving that number up is the e-play, 22.5. So that's a cost that we have identified, and so that's part of that $50,000 bump. The other number that goes up is even though we're not adding any additional staff, the benefits are increasing, and that has a almost $28,000 impact between 2014 and 2013. So adding those two numbers together is the reason for the $50,000 difference. And with regards to customer service, the services that are being provided at Access Aurora are general questions. When we get into specific questions with regards to the ability to book a room, availability of space, initiation of contracts, payments, those types of things, those are all being done within the Parks and Recreation Department.
Councillor?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Downey at this point? Councillor Buck?
Going back to that pressures, Mr. Mayor, on difficulties of maintaining the service because of the pressures. One of the pressures is the landscaping and the banning of herbicides, and how difficult the pressure on manpower.
I'm sorry, Councillor Buck, could you give us a page reference, please?
It's page, I think it was 12.2.
Right at the bottom.
Actually, I was referring to that.
To Mr. Mayor, 12.5.
Thank you.
Yeah.
At the bottom of 12.5, third bullet from the bottom.
Right, yeah, that's the one. So, the question is, if we're facing these new challenges to maintaining landscape features, and that I don't see any solution to the problem of herbicide banning, that has to mean either you let the weeds take over completely, or you have more manpower to dig them out by hand, or not hand, but trowel or whatever. So, are we looking at alternatives to landscaping, and is there an opportunity there to change our policies? We have policies for new subdivision agreement. We have grass verges, we have boulevards, all of which, and we've been looking for years for another type of ground cover that would help to resolve the problem we have with maintaining green cover on the boulevards. We've never been able to come up with something like that, although we've been looking at least 5 years. In fact, I ask every year, and we haven't found anything. Another kind of ground cover, as opposed to grass, that would not require the herbicides and would maintain a green cover on the boulevards. And then I don't think we have a lot of gardens, and I'm not sure that the weed problem is well, I guess it has to be. If you're not digging out the weeds, then the weeds are taking over. And there's not a lot of point in having flower beds if you're not able to control the weeds.
Let me go to Mr. Downey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our inability to use herbicides has certainly impacted us, and we've had to do a number of different measures. I see former Councillor Morakis in the audience. In fact, it was her motion with regards to looking for alternative methods or alternative ground covers for boulevards. We had test plots for a number of years outside or on Industrial Parkway, testing out different types of materials. We haven't found one that works yet. But we are continuing to explore those because we very much would like to try to get something that is going to reduce the amount of maintenance and the amount of weeds that invade those boulevards. But we're finding that we're losing that battle, and that many of the boulevards now have more weeds than they've ever had before. And it's becomes a normality within our community in the spring to see dandelions everywhere. With regards to changing in our standards, we are doing that. In fact, draw your attention to the new planting beds that we put on Wellington Street in those stone planters. We've filled those with perennials so that each year we are not turning that bed over and creating more opportunity for weeds to grow, but with the idea that those perennials are going to grow in, choke out any weeds that grow in that particular area, and so that we're providing a floral bloom in the summer without looking at tilling those beds, putting in annuals, and doing additional maintenance with regards to weed removal. So yes, we are changing some of our methods, but it often times we get a situation where only the manpower will take care of the weeds, and we need to put a crew in there and pull weeds for the morning or the afternoon. And where we used to send one person in with a backpack sprayer for 5 minutes is now a crew of 5 or 6 for a morning.
I can't help wondering, Mr. Mayor, from all the years we've been trying, when do you admit you're beat? That you can't compete with the weeds. We're still requiring developers to put in top quality sod on the boulevards. It's not there 6 months before it's smothered with weeds. So it's a losing battle, and now it's costing us. We have it here saying it's a cost pressure on the budget. So at what point do we find another alternative and admit we can't maintain grass anymore on the boulevards, and there isn't an alternative, and maybe it should be hardscaped and let people ride their bikes and scooters and whatever else instead of having grass?
Is that a question for Mr. Downey?
Yeah. I'm thinking of the snowmelt situation as well while I ask it.
In a philosophical debate, I'd still rather have the dandelions than hardscape. So I'm still a guy who likes green, and so I would still prefer to see dandelions. As I said, it becomes a bit of a norm. We're getting fewer and fewer and fewer complaints and concerns raised by the public with regards to the amount of dandelions within our parks and open spaces and boulevards. People are just being more acceptable of it.
Well, then my answer to that, Mr. Mayor, is why don't we just sow dandelion seeds instead of having top quality sod laid?
The Lord does a better job at it than I do.
All the money and everything else it costs to put down grass and water it and try and bring it to life. And it's all a waste of time. I have another question, Mr. Mayor, if nobody else has any.
Quickly.
The storm damage, do you have figures on the Parks Department for storm damage that have to be included in this budget?
Is that something that you budget for?
I know Mr. Elliott said 147,000.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer to the Treasurer. We've just provided a report to him with regards to storm damage and detailed costs with regards to what the impact has been in Aurora.
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've gone through the report from Mr. Downey's team, and I missed a little footnote in the bottom that said this is only for street trees, and for all of our parks and open space, you need to double it to account for that. And so I have drafted our claim form for the ODRAP resolution that was done on Saturday. I've now got it out for review. The total on that claim is approximately $237,000, and that covers street trees and parks and open space tree and shrub damage, cleanup, removal, debris removal, but does not include the cost of replanting those trees.
Okay, I think Councillor Buck's question is that included in our budget anywhere?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not included, but it is accounted for.
Okay, thank you.
Now, my last question.
Councillor, I thought that was your last question.
No, this is the last question.
This is the last.
And it's page 12-13. And it's funds for a museum. There's nothing in the budget. I take it from this short, brief paragraph at the head of this blank page, there's nothing in this budget to provide for the start-up of the museum.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We haven't allocated any funds within the budget other than the $100,000, which has already been allocated for the provision of museum services. Council has directed staff to put out a request for proposal for museum services, which we have done. I believe it closes a week Thursday. And at that time, we will then be bringing a report back to Council on what the cost of the provision of that services will be.
And it will be included in your budget for 2014?
It's my intent that when I bring the report forward, that an adjustment to the budget be made in the amount of whatever that happens to be.
And then I read that your department is now responsible for cultural services. Does that mean the cost of the program at the Church Street School will be included in your budget?
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Mayor, presently the money allocated to the Aurora Cultural Centre is within corporate accounts. And good guess, within corporate accounts, and I don't know whether there's an intention to move those funds from there into our budget, but it presently is sitting in corporate accounts.
Well, it would certainly seem logical since you've been given responsibility for it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, Councillor Abel, you have not spoken yet, so I'll go to you, and then I'll go to Councillors Ballard, Peary, and Gallo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I recall and I don't think it was your presentation, Mr. Downey, but we have the cultural service agreement, the historical, and grants that are normally before us, and they are not on a budget at this time. So
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Treasurer has informed me they're in a council admin, and that's next on the docket.
thank you.
Councillor Ballard, Peary, Gallo.
How much greenhouse space do we have? And what does it cost us to run a greenhouse or greenhouses?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the greenhouse is approximately, I'll say, 700 square feet. We got it for free from some study that was being done by the ministry, and they relocated that building up to the Parks Yard. What it costs to operate, I'm sorry, I cannot tell you from a heating perspective. Horticulturally, I believe we identify that separately in the budget, so bear with me 1 second, please. Our horticulture program for the town is identified costing $14,000.
Councillor?
So that's, that's the entire horticultural program, of which the 700 square foot greenhouse would be most likely a very small portion of that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we primarily use it. We'll be actually starting our plants fairly soon. And so we fill that as much as we possibly can in order to help offset our costs that we have to buy from other greenhouse operations. We also store all the the planters from Yonge Street in the greenhouse, so we're not replacing those each year. But this time it's packed, it's full and growing. But that includes the operation of the greenhouse, as well as the purchase of the plants and the maintenance of those plants throughout the year.
Councillor?
Thank you. Just to follow up on another issue that isn't in the blues, but is the replacement of trees and shrubs, I'm a little confused because of the storm, is that included in the 2014 budget? And I guess the figure of 237, is that the value of the trees and shrubs we lost, or is that simply the person hours it took to clean everything up?
Okay, I'll let you answer the second part, Dan. Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the cost of dealing with the storm, we haven't got it in the 2014 budget. It's not a cost that we've allocated. However, it is a cost that we're capturing within the 2013 budget, and we'll simply be running over in certain areas in addressing those. And then, Dan, if you want to go into detail with regards to
Mr. Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The $237,000 figure that I mentioned earlier includes all of the cleanup and first response to the downed trees, public safety risk mitigation, trimming and pruning and removal of branches and so on. It also includes forecast costs to continue the work until it's done. Obviously, it's not done yet. And so it includes all of those, but it does not include any provision for the replacement and replanting of trees that have to be removed. It includes the costs to remove and dispose, because those are eligible claimable costs. Replacement are not claimable costs under the ODRAP program.
Good. A rhetorical question is it would have cost us a little bit more had Newmarket not lent us a parks crew, I would imagine.
That's true.
Councillor Gallo. I'm sorry, Councillor Perry, then Councillor Gallo.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to ask about clover being a suitable turf replacement, but that's an offline conversation for a different time, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just on page 12.7 at the bottom, in terms of transferring revenues and transferring from parks development DC's reserve and transfer from landscape reserve. Just to give me a sense of, obviously it's a reoccurring thing. The transfer from parks development DC's brings me some concern, because that the balance of that account is around $7 million deficit. What's the plan around there? And maybe I can assume that once 2Cs and the new DC study and all that, it's going to be replenishing that account, and we'll be continuing to draw on those reserves as revenue.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With regards to the transfer DC reserves, those are done in response to DC work that our staff perform that is DC eligible. So they perform other works besides that, but any work that is DC eligible, design of parks, review of plans, those types of things are DC eligible, and we charge those out. However, you will notice that there is a reduction in 2014 from 2013. We are recommending and recommended to the Treasurer this year that we reduce our cost by 10%, and we do a 10% reduction for the next 10 years, weaning ourselves off of any DC reserve transfers as well as any land transfers from landscape reserves, because we feel by that period of time the majority of development will be completed, and we want to make sure that we are not having one single year hit with regards to absorbing these costs. So we are weaning ourselves off at 10% a year commencing this year.
Councillor?
And through you, in terms of replenishing the fund, at least that one fund, that's a deficit of just over $7 million.
Mr. Elliott, perhaps?
Sorry, Dan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's part of the DC revenue that we're anticipating from the 2C. We'll replenish that, and that's the source of financing for that. Now, some of that is mapped out for you in the additional report that was on Saturday's agenda for supplementary taxes, mapping out when we anticipate some of those revenues to occur. But certainly within the next 8 years, we expect the full amount.
Councillor?
Okay, and the other question on the same page under, well, the whole issue of the soccer bubble. So we have a budget of $56,300 for taxes. We somewhere around $20,000 for utilities, and we had a report. It'll be a year in about 3 or 4 weeks, directing, well, why don't I read it? So, moved by Councillor Buck, seconded by Councillor Peary, that staff be directed to negotiate terms of a new agreement with the Aurora Sports Dome based on objectives of transferring all costs associated with the operation of the dome to Aurora Sports Dome, and that the town solicitor report back to council on a tax exemption status and any opportunity to recoup taxes paid. That was February 12, 2013. I don't know if there's anything new after that. Maybe someone can update me if there's anything new after that. But my point being that in 2013 we spent around $70,000, and now if this goes forward in this budget, we'll be spending somewhere around another $70,000 to something that, in my view, we could be avoiding.
Mr. Downey?
Mr. Mayor, I can assure you that we have been actively working on trying to get a resolution to this. And there have been several, and I'll say 20, meetings with regards to how we might identify, how we might reduce this, if not eliminate these costs. There have been a number of scenarios discussed. I'm fairly confident in saying that we're getting close to an agreement that I believe will address the issues that Council asked us to address. We had a meeting, in fact, last week with regards to this. We are planning another one in a couple of weeks, and with that, hopefully coming back to Council in February or March with regards to recommendations and how this issue may be addressed. So it is not something that has gone without notice. We have been actively working on it. I just haven't been successful in getting a resolution, a satisfactory resolution to address Council's concerns that is palatable to all parties.
Councillor?
Pull the plug.
And and I'll wait for that. And Councillor Buck said, "Pull the plug." I mean, we have that option. It's part of the a certain part of our agreement. And if we wait another year, it's $140,000 that the taxpayers paid that perhaps they didn't have to. But I'll wait and see what's next.
Having no other speakers. Councillor Buck, you've already gone twice.
I just want to make a comment. No question.
And would this be a long comment or a short one?
I think we found the solution to the ground cover problem. Dandelions. We don't need to look for another ground cover. Mr. Downey is perfectly happy. The people are perfectly happy with dandelions. So we should just forget about it, and forget about the pressure as well. Just don't have them put down the subdividers, put down top quality sod. Tell them, slow dandelions.
Put down cheaper sods so they can
Or just
be
wait
taken
for
over by dandelions.
to take over.
Okay, council, calling the vote on. You have not spoken twice, Councillor Humphreys, so. Councillor Elliott, would you like to ask a question?
If I may, just as Councillor Humphreys is gathering her thoughts there. Earlier, Councillor Thompson asked a question about the numbers on the top of page 12-7 and why they're dropping off in the out years. We've identified that exactly which account it is. It's in the Parks Operations. It appears to be a typographical error in the inputting of the forecasting. However, we will confirm that with Mr. Tree in the coming days, and perhaps a change is necessary. It accounts for $52,000 of the change. It's been $58,000 on this line item, and it's $58,000 in 2015 outlook, and then it drops to $5,800 in the following two. So it appears to be a typo, but there may be a method to the madness there, and so we want to confirm that before we suggest a change is necessary.
So Mr. Elliott, that would be the other expenditures under Parks and Open Spaces for 2016 and 2017?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And one further thing is in the opening remarks, Mr. Downey mentioned that he needs another $19,000 in the senior center part-time wages line. And so your resolution is now be approved as amended to include that $19,000 additional amount.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think I've worked it out. I asked my partner here beside me. I just noticed on page 12-9, and it's just a significant comment. This has changed from 2013 budget. The very last line, 61.2%, but that's obviously to do with, I guess, the lack of revenues compared to the year before, and that just equates to that significant change, I guess. Is
that a question for Mr. Downey? Or? Mr. Downey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's where the majority of the revenue loss for the Aurora Family Leisure Complex is contained. So that's why there's such a dramatic drop.
Calling the question then. All in favor of Parks and Recreation Services budget, 2014 operating budget as amended? All in favor? Contrary?
Are we based upon no approval of this budget?
No, it still goes to council. Still goes to council. This is GC. All in favor of the budget as presented? Contrary? That's carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up is Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott will be doing the council budget, which is tab 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the first time that you'll have seen these slides. We didn't present this one on Saturday because we were trying to focus on the initiatives and achievements of each of the departments in our presentations on Saturday. So I've got a handful of slides here to go through in detail the budget's breakdown of the council administration section. And this year's slides are a little bit different than last year, and I trust that you'll find that there's very, very little to have discussion on in here. I'll try to focus your attention to the areas. For those that are watching, the functions of this budget that covers this budget is the Office of the Mayor and Council, all of the costs related to the salaries and compensation of the elected members, together with their support staff, and various costs related to their activities, including conferences, some travel, some municipal business, some receptions, and so on. There's also a section in here on community grants, and we'll look at that in detail line by line. And we also have a third section that provides a little funding for the town's advisory committees for various purposes, and we'll look at those line by line as well. So within the budget in total, it's just under $600,000. There's a $14,000 change representing 2.4, and I will detail pretty much each specific line that is affected here. So in the council, actually overall, we've got salaries and benefits changes for the elected members and the one support staff that is included in this budget. Other council line increases, there are none. There are $800 of cash reductions in the budget in the council section. Community grants net is an increase of is a decrease of $5,000, and the business achievement awards is being added back in this year. Last year, I gather, it was a one-year hiatus on that program, and so this year we've put it back in. And the advisory committees, I've got a $300 change in there. So when we go into the council administration section itself, the top line shows you where the budget is for the personnel costs, and that is increasing 2.6%, and that is budgeted increase as well as some changes on the benefit side for the mayor and for the admin assistant, together with increases in the statutory deductions that we contribute to as an employer for EI and CPP and things like that, Ontario Health Tax. Mileage and auto allowance has been modified just slightly, up $900 to reflect an indexing that occurs each December. There was no change based on the work of the Council Compensation Advisory Committee. Advertising and sponsorships, that account is held at $2,000 flat. Special functions is granted. It was provided by a bylaw in the past. It's no longer by bylaw. It's $6,900, and that is for various purposes, but it's special functions, and it's available to members of council to access to attend events and so on. Conferences, that was previously by bylaw, also no longer, and we've flatlined that at $27,000. Civic responsibilities, this is substantially the volunteer recognition program, and that is flatlined at $17,600. And the other accounts, all other accounts, there's a couple of little ones where we trimmed a few things, and we trimmed $800 off, and so the net impact on this budget is $10,700, or 2.8%. So that is the budget for, if I may be so bold, this table and its activities. The community grants section of this budget, I'll just go through this fairly quickly. The culture and recreation grants, we have an approved budget of $31,000, holding flat. The historical grant, last year we took $10,000 of council contingency funding and moved it to the Historical Society for, I believe it was for an anniversary event. And so we've taken that off this year. And so there's a $10,000 reduction here in that line item. It's offset by the replacement of that $10,000 back into council contingency elsewhere in the budget. The education grants are held flat. For clarity, I've added an extra slide in here next to it. This is 2 scholarships, a male and a female, at each of 5 schools. So 2 times $400 per school times 5 schools is $4,000. And so that's the total expenditure in this section. And there's revenues. There was a planned draw last year of $10,000 from arts and culture through the new program and what's being administered from Mr. Downey. There was not as many arts and culture type applications for the grant funding. It was more sports and recreation type applications. So we've dropped this down by $5,000, and we'll monitor that throughout the year. If the need arises for additional revenue to fund that program, we'd be happy to make that change mid-year. And so that is a draw from the Arts and Culture Reserve, which is funded from donations that occur periodically from a handful of families. So that is the net change in this budget. Again, just the two minor changes. And then there's the 5 schools, if you're wondering which ones they are. Carter, G.W. Williams, the French Catholic Renaissance School, St. Maximilian Kolbe, and Aurora High School. They each receive 2 scholarships of $400 each, a male and a female, is my understanding. And then we go to this last section of the budget is advisory committees. And we looked at this and wanted to make sure that we evened a few things up. The accessibility, this is funding that is provided to the chair and the committee to assist them with their meetings, whether it's refreshments or special needs to assist that committee, interpretive individuals, if that's the case. And so these are just funding for those committees to operate. EDAC, the Economic Development Committee, has the additional $8,000 with respect to the Business Achievement Awards. Sorry, it was right there. So they do have their base $500 for their meetings, plus the $8,000 for the Business Achievement Awards. The Accessibility Advisory Committee on the first line, changes by $300 to bring it up to a standard $500. It was, for some reason, it's been $200 there for a while. And then the Environmental Committee has its base $500. The Heritage Committee has its base $500, together with $5,000 towards the Open Doors Aurora program that they operate each year. And so that's to assist in developing program materials and promotion and the things that are necessary to carry out that program. The Parks and Rec and the Trails and Active Transportation Committee have not been privy to any budgetary funding. And in conversation with the Director of Parks and Rec, he's not recommending it. However, if the chairs of those committees would like to see a standard $500 funding, I'm certain that a resolution to that matter could be done here tonight. So that, Mr. Chair, is the detail, as I said, line by line, through the Council Administration section. I'd be happy to answer any questions or clarify anything.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elliott. Linda, could you bring the resolution up on the screen, please? And if someone would care to put that on the floor, please. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Abel, second. Comments or questions from Mr. Elliott? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, when you mentioned on the last page for the Accessibility Advisory Committee that this money pays for an interpreter, etc., my understanding was that came out of the Accessibility Advisor's budget.
I'm sorry, I lost the slide presentation. It may be coming out of one place or the other. This is a budget for the activities of the specific committee, not the advisor and his activities, but for the committee.
No, I understand that, but now that we have somebody who's on the committee who needs an interpreter every meeting, I'm sure that the $200 that's been allocated here would have it just can't be possible. Right. So I think the comment about the interpreter should not be included in this chart.
Okay.
Thank you. Could you say what the balance is in the culture, well, I'm not sure what it's called, the Culture and Recreation Grant Reserve? Although the money was put in for a culture, only for culture reserve? Or, sorry, cultural initiatives?
Mr. Elliott?
Thank you. I'm just looking at the reserve schedule that was in the opening report on Saturday's agenda. I'm looking at consecutive page 15 on that agenda, item 1, page 15, and I'm seeing the The Arts and Cultural Grant is the second line listed under Special Purposes Accounts, and it's showing a year-end balance estimated about $54,000 for 2013.
Okay, so thank you. The culture grants would be coming out of there, but what about the recreation grants?
They are not funded from that account. They are funded from the tax base.
The recreation grants are funded from the tax base. And the community grants, could you please say again what the community grants are?
I'm sorry, those are the recreation and community grants, same program. It's one program now. It's not two. I believe it used to be two separate programs. They were merged together within the last 15, 16 months, I believe, and Mr. Downey administers those and reports to council on a regular basis on those. So that's the combined program. It's
So then should this community, okay, thank you.
It's $31,000 budget for grants, $5,000 of which is coming from the Arts and Culture Reserve.
And we only have $5,400 in that reserve.
No, $54,000.
$54,000, that sounds better. To you, Mr. Mayor, I remember it was to take place in a summer, and so I'm thinking maybe 2.5 years ago, or 1.5 years ago anyway, we had a conversation at the table about a former donor to the cultural grants, and I believe you said that you would be having a meeting with them. Does that former donor, is that former donor still contributing to this?
Just want to be very careful what I say in public here. There has been no donation over the last year, Mr. Elliott, if you could confirm that, or deny.
I'd like to confirm that. I can certainly recall the conversations with two parties, and both of them reconfirmed their commitment to continue making donations to these funds for the purposes of assisting the arts and the cultural aspects of the community. But certainly they sort of drew the line at the Parks and Rec side, although one donor suggested that he was fine with his funding also assisting those who are, he used the word, the poor within the community. And so I think that there's a little bit of latitude happening there. We're working to get a donation from that individual this year, and again, we will confirm their intentions for that. But it's our pleasure to work with these donors who are looking for ways to assist our community.
Thank you, and it's very public information. In the past, it's been the Merkers and Mr. Lebovic who've contributed, thankfully, to this fund. So I'm hoping that they are being approached.
Other questions? Councillor Buck.
I don't know what slide it is, and I didn't bring those documents with me tonight, Mr. Mayor, but they're on the council slide. We found $800 worth of savings. There, you had it on, and then it went off again. Oh, there it is, second from the bottom. Other accounts, $800.
If I recall correctly, it was your salary that we reduced. No.
What?
It was your salary, Councillor Buck.
It was your salary. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
We can be pragmatic about it, but through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Elliott, I know that there was no increase for councillors' salaries in the last term. And we are completing this term, and there is no increase for councillor salaries. And I don't recall what happened in the term before the last term. So how long is it since any council has seen fit to provide an increase to the remuneration paid to elected members?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the elected members have two components of their compensation. One is their base salary, and one is their travel allowance. The travel allowance is indexed to Statistics Canada CPI each December the 1st.
I'm not asking about the travel allowance.
I know.
Let Mr.
understand
Elliott
that.
finish, please.
And the salary base compensation was reviewed by the Council Compensation Advisory Committee. They agreed that the compensation currently being paid, together with its indexing clause, was appropriate and that no changes were required. So the council compensation has been indexed each April, or at least once each year, to match the indexes that have been provided to the non-union staff.
So councillors or various councils have classified themselves at the level of non-union staff. That's how the remuneration has changed. And I would have to say, Mr. Mayor, that if councillors themselves do not value the service they provide and the increasing responsibilities, and each and every one of you know how much time and commitment you make to this job, and yet you don't, it grows every year. The responsibility, the budget grows. Last year it was 52 million. What is it this year? We're responsible for an operating budget in excess of $50 million. We are responsible for a budget that size and don't recognize the extent of that responsibility and commitment. We allow ourselves to be undervalued because we're afraid of the political consequences of saying anything about it. Next year, this year, we will have an election. And if we have any responsibility at all, any conscientious responsibility at all, we have to think about who is it we want to attract as candidates, and how do you attract good candidates? And you know better than anyone how much time you put into the job. It's classified as a part-time job. You all know there's nothing part-time about the commitment you make to this job. It's a 7-day-a-week job. Whenever anybody wants to contact you, you'll be there for them. And I know that is true of each and every one of you. And it's certainly true of me. And yet you continue to undervalue the service you provide to the community. And I don't think that's particularly admirable. I think that's cowardly. And when we accepted the last Citizens Committee report, which said we shouldn't have an increase because of the economy, have we noticed anyone else in the administration not having an increase because of the economy? I don't think so. So why do we go on? Why do we allow this? You know how other municipalities, the only municipalities, I think there's only one municipality that pays less than Aurora. I remember that from the committee report. And then you look at the municipalities at the south end where they have ward systems. They're responsible for a fraction of the number of people that we are. They have offices. They have administrative salaries for their offices. Councillors in Markham share an office, and they share staff. And I don't know, maybe it's $50,000, maybe it's more. A Markham councillor gets paid. A ward councillor gets paid. A ward councillor gets paid. Speak up, Councillor Gertner. How much is it, you know? I think it's $55,000.
65.
Oh, jeez, $65,000.
Councillor Buck?
And we continue to, Mr. Mayor, I'm the oldest person here.
So?
And I'm not employed. I don't have a job. I certainly work daily on my job as a councillor, but I can't imagine what it's like for councillors who are going out to work. Here we are today, Saturday we were here from 9 o'clock to 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's not about the hours. It's about the level of responsibility that we have. And we downgrade it all the time, and we wonder why. We're not people, there isn't the respect. Well, there is the respect, I know. There is a respect from the community with people who understand. But by and large, that's not the majority of people, and the problem starts right here, because we undervalue the services. And if we can't tell people who are doing the job, if we can't tell them that it's worth more, then who will tell them? There's no media here tonight, Mr. Mayor, but I guess this committee meeting is being streamed. That's good. And I really don't expect any one of you to speak up and support me in what I'm saying, because I know what the political fallout will be for that. But you misjudge the people. You misjudge them if you don't think they appreciate the level of commitment you're making and the amount that you put into this job. And what they see here in this council chamber is a fraction of what you put into it, and yet you are not prepared to put a value on it. And Mr. Mayor, I look to you. You should have spoken up for the council when that report came in, and you didn't. You took the increase that was recommended for you, and you didn't speak up for the council.
I would disagree with you, but that's obviously a difference of opinion. Any other comments or questions on Mr. Elliott's presentation? Councillor Gardner. Councillor Ballard.
I will speak up in support of what Councillor Buck has just said. I agree with her.
As a matter of fact, Councillor Gardner, it was you that brought the concept forward, as I recall. Councillor Ballard.
I was wondering if there was going to be a motion on the table. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, can you just walk me through conferences per bylaw? The preliminaries, actuals, and the adjusted budget. Is it right that last year we budgeted $27,000 and we've spent $20,500? Am I reading that correctly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. There's my understanding is that there was just in the last week or so there was an expense claim form filed towards the 2013 conferences, and so that $2,500 is what's currently in the books. And then there's yet another claim, and there perhaps is another claim or two. We have time until about the 27th of January to get the last of those claims in.
Okay, that's probably answered my next question, which is why would we budget $27,000 a year? But it sounds like to me that by the time you process those outstanding claims, we'll be at the or close to the $27,000 limit.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the ending quantum, but the legacy of the 27 was $3,000 per times 9, and at one time that was entrenched in bylaw, and it was in the council compensation bylaw. It was entrenched in there. It's been removed from that bylaw and referred to the annual budget. So here's your opportunity to change, be it increase or decrease, the $27,000 amount. We don't have to change a bylaw to do it.
Okay, thank you. And just one final question. The civic responsibility, $17,600, does that include staff time, staff overtime, for example?
No, sir.
That's just straight out-of-pocket costs?
Substantially that is out-of-pocket costs, including gifts, awards, decoration, planning, invitations, different specific event related items, but does not include staff time.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the civic responsibilities through you, does that include the community awards that we do annually?
Mr. Elliott's just looking it up, and I'm pretty sure that does.
The civic events include things like the Seniors Tea, award and event sponsorships and attendance, Citizen of the Year receptions, purchase of the Preserve Aurora art piece, the Seniors art piece, and I think there's a few other little words here yet.
But what's the community volunteer
Yes.
ceremony that we do?
That's the major component of it.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Councillor Buck?
Did Mr. Elliott give us the answer about the $800 reduction on other accounts?
Mr. Elliott, did you give us the answer?
There are two separate line items that were in the account. One is office equipment, and one is office equipment repairs. And both of those were reduced by $400, showing the $800 reduction.
And did you say, Mr. Elliott, that the deadline for filing the convention expenses?
At this time of the year, every year there is. I'd be happy to re-communicate it to you or ensure that you get it. We've communicated it to all staff. It has to do with the cutoff of our year-end accounting books, and it's not just conferences, it's any expenditures related to 2013 need to be in by a certain date. I'll flip that to you shortly.
Any other comments or questions? I will comment slightly on the concept of council compensation. It's because I was actually working with one of the councillors from Whitchurch Stouffville who did a very extensive analysis. He comes from the world of job evaluation. So he did a very extensive evaluation on his understanding of a councillor's responsibilities, compared it to the particular salary grade they had in Whitchurch Stouffville. Came up, I don't know what the grade level was, but the salary, as I recall, the salary for that grade level was $100,000 a year. So his math was that that's the full-time job at 100, councillor's part-time job, $50,000. I think everybody around this table quite understands, and you are right. Some people you talk to in the public absolutely understand and appreciate what goes on, certainly not all. And I did support the concept of increasing salaries. It was council's decision to go to an external body, to a council compensation committee. Council, they did a fair amount of work. They did, I'm not sure what they did. I'm not privy to all the details they did, but they did a fair amount of work. They came up with some recommendations. Perhaps it's time that, and I know that Councillor Thompson and I chatted about some ideas, and I don't remember all the details, but it was taking it right out of council hands and actually relating it to a specific position in the salary grid we have in Town Hall, taking that right off the table, so that it doesn't become that political football that some people seem to think it does. And maybe that's something that this council can recommend going forward, that we look at a different way to do it. Because quite obviously the results of the Council Compensation Committee, although it was passed here and voted on, and there was certainly a robust discussion as I recall. Oh yeah, there was there was a lot of discussion.
People saying they were being ill-treated?
No, I didn't hear anybody say they were being ill-treated. There was nothing like that. We were just having a discussion. So I'm thinking maybe we need to look at a different way of doing that, and perhaps something this council needs to do is recommend to future councils going forward to look at a different way that takes it out of that political football arena.
Isn't there any way you can take it out of the political
Sure, absolutely you can. You could say that, I'll just pick a position in town, manager of something, I don't know what. They have a certain amount of responsibilities. Mr. Garby, you can maybe make an example here. We don't have the same type of workload that that person has, but we certainly have the responsibilities. As you point out correctly, we're responsible. It's actually more like over a $70 million budget by the time we include everything. That's a fair amount of responsibility that we are responsible for, as well as a number of other things. And indeed, depending on the weather conditions out there, at one point I was thinking it was a 24/7 job. So to take that out and say, okay, well, your responsibilities as a counselor relate to this particular level that we have already established in the town, and because it's classified as part-time, it's 50% of that. And that takes it right off any discussion, and it just becomes part of the operating base of the town. And maybe that's something that we could look forward or look to recommending to the next council that they consider doing something like that. Because I totally agree with you that you want it's an extremely demanding job, and it should be compensated correctly. I don't disagree with that at all. I don't think anybody around this table does disagree with you, and I would agree with you that some of the people I speak to would think the same way. Others, not so much. So if we take that away from this table, that might be the way to do it.
Well, we're doing a budget now, maybe we should be doing that now. And I would appreciate, Mr. Mayor, you've indicated that you've had a discussion about it, and you agree with what I'm saying, and I think it should come from your...
I'm happy to do something about that. I will put that on my task list.
We don't speak for ourselves, but as the head of the council, you certainly can.
I'd be happy to do that, Councillor. Now, Councillor Gartner, you've already spoken twice.
I was just going to say that what you said sounds like a motion to me.
Well, it probably needs to come back as a separate.
So a motion for staff, perhaps, to look at the issue?
Well, I'll bring it back as a separate notice of motion. I think that would probably be more appropriate to do that. But I will definitely do that. Notwithstanding that, may I please, we've called the motion. All in favor? Contrary? We should also have a motion to receive Mr. Elliott's presentation. If Councillors Ballard and Abel, I believe. This is to receive Mr. Elliott's presentation. All in favor? Contrary? Mr. Elliott, did you want to say something?
I was going to say we also, if you're completed your discussion on the blue pages, we need a motion to adopt the budget for this tab.
That's what I just did before the other one. Madam Clerk, did I do that? The first motion was to accept the blue pages. Okay. The second motion was we did it backwards.
Missed it. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. You have to keep us on our toes. Well, obviously, it has to go to council to be for final approval. Up next, Mr. Garby, dealing with tab 5. We had the presentation on Saturday. So if someone would put that motion on the floor, move and second, we can discuss it. Councillor Gartner, thank you. Moving, second. Councillor Abel, thank you. Speakers? I'm sorry, Councillor Gardner, did you have your hand up?
Can't remember. Did we have this presented? Did we have the whites presented? Okay, so we're in the blues. No, I didn't have my hand up yet.
Okay. Sorry. Well, if there's no questions. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perry.
I'll start it
I
off.
could get someone.
I'd like to put, when we look at the 5-2, we can look at the initiatives for 2014. I'd like to be able to put some timelines around some of these, specifically around the performance measurement system. Is there some sort of indication when you foresee coming forward with a report or some ideology around the implementation of that? Through you to Mr. Garby.
Mr. Garby, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, The intention was in the first quarter, to bring back the first report of the consolidation of all of the performance measures that were indicated last year, and that, I don't know if that was what you're referring to, and we're trying to work on some additional measures in a particular format, so it expands the number of measures that we're looking at as well. Councillor?
And then going back to that service level review where we looked at discretionary versus mandatory and different service levels, different services, corporate communications can be one that can be viewed as discretionary. Will there be some consideration as we go through that service level process of exploring that option of what would it look like if corporate communications was done by contract or by a third party as opposed to internally? As a way of just sort of bringing forward ideas that are sort of outside of the box in terms of cost comparisons and so forth.
Mr. Garvey. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that wasn't one that came to mind right off the top of my head. As we can look at it. The plan was in the shared service review to look at all of those aspects, whether they're contract or in-house services, discretionary or non-discretionary, traditional or non-traditional, and roll that into a service delivery model discussion based on a prioritization of those. What I can suggest is that in perhaps the early part of September, we could bring back a status report and saying here's what, maybe even before that, maybe even June, bring back a work plan so Council has an idea of what our approach will be, and then go forward with some ideas or some interim progress reports from there. Councillor?
And just to clarify, I only mentioned that one specifically only because it's directly under your budget here for administration. I certainly see it as part and parcel of the whole report coming back. I just wanted clarity that, yes, that may be one of many of them that are going to be included within the report, since it is really deemed discretionary.
Other comments or questions? I've got Councillor Puri next. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 5.5. Advertising costs. I've noticed that over the last few years, 2012 actuals were $111,000. 2013 actuals were about $35,000 cheaper than we'd budgeted. We've only dropped it by $10,000 this year. What extra costs are you anticipating this year over next year? That explains why you would only drop it 10 as opposed to dropping it a little bit more.
Mr. Garvey. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a handout specifically on advertising, anticipating questions about advertising, so I will distribute that now as perhaps as I talk, and think maybe, Linda, you can pick up the balance on the outside. I think I've made about 15 copies or so.
Before we do this, I'll put a motion to receive this memorandum. Do we need that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Puri. Second? Please, Councillor Humphreys, thank you.
So there's been a couple iterations. So when Human Resources moved into the CAO's office, it brought those advertising dollars in. And as well this year, and there's an adjustment, we've also captured the Parks and Rec advertising dollars into this department. So we're actually consolidating all the advertising into our department. So that explains the increases over time. With respect to our plan for 2014, in the memo, the first section explains what the budget allocation is. The second section is where we spent money in 2013. And then there's some more detailed information, and Councillor Gallo and I have been exchanging information for the last year or so on specific publications, which I've provided some additional information on. the reason why we're not more aggressive on our dropping our advertising is we'd like to see a trend, more of a trend on the impact. So we are dropping it, allowing ourselves some cushion because there are things that do come up. This is an election year, so perhaps we need to, and our plan is to actually heighten our advertising campaign on Vote 2014. You know that, or you may be aware, on our webpage we have a logo, Vote 2014, and so our push is to try to use different ways of engaging the citizenry to come out and vote. So there's some special projects there. So I'd like a little bit of cushion in there because it does become fairly dynamic, but it is a consistent trend to reduce our budget.
Councillor?
That's it for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Garby. There's also, or Mr. Downey, there's also advertising in the Parks and Rec Department under the Business Support Services. It says operating materials. So with that, we're talking about brochures. What?
That's correct.
There's different kinds of advertising.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is different mediums. So we have posters. That's a typical one that we use. We use, for instance, fitness, the Club Aurora. We do brochures for them as well as their summer camps, and so it's different mediums. So.
Thank you. And we also saw Saturday that we have saved some money in the past year because of social media. So how do you see that influencing a downward trend in this? This is mostly print advertising?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Or this is all advertising?
This is all advertising and all advertising initiatives. So it includes our promotional and marketing initiatives. So it's not just necessarily print, but also others. There's special projects. So residence guide circulation, radio campaigns that we may want to use, the notion of the so-called robocalls for citizen notification that would fall under the 10,500. So we continue to monitor it. We continue to try to leverage our LinkedIn account for advertising wherever we can. But we do need to recognize that not everyone is social media savvy, so we do have to pay attention to our multiple channels of communication. I will also, this thought just escaped me. I'm sorry. It'll
Just because your comment on social media, Councillor Gartner, if you look at the 2014, the second line is 30,000 for employment notices, including LinkedIn.
I'm sorry. Could you tell me what page?
Yeah, just on the front page of Mr. Garby's memo.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
In 2014, we're looking at $30,000 advertising for employment notices, including LinkedIn, and last year it was $40,000 for the same.
So we can expect a downward trend because of because I know that was an intent a few years ago anyway to try and really become more progressive with social media.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's actually the second year of a $10,000 decrease. So we are moving back in that direction.
Thank you.
Are there any other?
Mr. Mayor, I also with the change in format with the Aurora, we do have an opportunity to perhaps there's more ad space in our notice board, so that may limit the necessity for spillover advertising. So we may next year see a continued reduction.
Mr. Mayor, I did have another question. Would you prefer I wait?
You have the floor.
On the Human Resources Division, I found it interesting that we have 2 human resources consultants. So these are people who are not paid benefits. How did we come to consultants? I don't.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's just the job title. And they're consultants because the way we set it up, similar to Mr. Elliott has set up the financial staff. So they have a portfolio of departments. The one would handle Parks and Rec and the CAO's office, and the other one would handle the balance. So, and They're experts, and so we treat them, the departments treat them as consultants.
And so that's fine. So it's the job title, and they get benefits as well?
That's correct. They're full-time employees.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Councillor Thompson. Second time, sir.
Second time. Going back to Mr. Scarby's original presentation, where he put up the accountability framework, and he said, for us, it's about are we doing the right things, and for him, it's are things being done right. So going back to the communication budget, specifically the advertising budget, 138,000, it's 0.5% tax levy. How do we know that these are the right things and that they're being done right? How are we evaluating and engaging them to ensure that it's achieving the objective it's set out to be? I agree that we need to continually engage and inform the residents and businesses in the community in general, but how do we know this is the most effective means to do it? It's easy to say, let's put money in this magazine, that magazine, and spend it here, but how are we evaluating that we're doing the right things, or in this case, advertising with the right people to send the right message to be able to achieve the objectives? Where are those?
Mr. Garvey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and this is a multi-billion-dollar question. It is a common question for all advertising. How effective are you going? How are you measuring your effectiveness? Can you measure market penetration? So what we rely on is what is the intent of the advertising, and what is the audience, and does this reach the audience? If the answers to those questions are yes, then that's how we proceed. Most of this is historic. We have always had a notice board, and so we continue that, and that's the vast majority of the expenditures and local print advertising. So we try different things. We have run contests in the past. So on specific media streams, if you've seen this on whatever media, Facebook or what have you, you can enter in a contest, and we get some relative feedback. And we haven't done that this past year. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago that we've done it. It's a bit of guesswork. So we rely on, for instance, you'll see why we think Sport and Aurora magazine and the offshoot Blades of Grass presents an opportunity. So we look at what are the benefits to that media, how far does it reach, what kind of does it line up with a message that we want to send, what's the extent to which that particular, in this case, magazine lasts. It lasts beyond a normal newspaper, because you see it in a chiropractor's office or whatever, where I've seen things. So there's no exact science, and I wish there was. And if anyone's got some good ideas on how to measure the effectiveness, I'm all ears. So that's a half answer, Councillor Thompson.
If I may, I bring it up because I think it's important to understand the goals and objectives, and I think it really comes to light based upon the last few weeks, especially with regards to the garbage, and the misses with the pickups and the emails we received, and how we were able to communicate with the residents, or to some degree, how we were not able to communicate with the residents. And so, I think when we're putting together advertising budgets or communication budgets, I think it's got to be clear what the goals and the objectives are. And so, some of these things come to light after, but it's our opportunity to look and say, okay, are we doing the right things? And if not, how do we address it? And, those robocalls, came to light because we learned that Newmarket was doing it, and that seemed to be an effective way for them to get the message out, and it's a lesson learned for us, absolutely. But, the priority should be about informing the residents, and I agree the notice board is historic, and it's done a good job of informing them, but again, it's always about making sure that it's aligning with our objectives.
Mr. Garvey.
That's an excellent point, and I was remiss because after events like the ice storm and garbage collection, garbage-related issues, we do sit down and say, okay, where was the information gaps and how can we do better? For instance, today we sat down on the ice storm and how do we communicate? And one of the feedback from Mayor Dawes that while we were on the radio, it was perhaps I can't drink. Maybe I don't know.
How do you say this politely?
Yeah.
We could have chosen a different station.
Yeah, so that's the feedback you'd sometimes learn afterwards and say, yeah, there was information that we could have got out in a different way and using different medias. And Councillor Ballard gave us the feedback again on Saturdays that using logic, if the power's out, you don't have necessarily access to the internet and so on. So social media can't be the only relied upon means. So it is iterative, and we do try to improve continuously. After all these events, we look at how we could have done things better. As well as with each event, we sit down with our departments and talk about a advertising strategy for each of the events. Ribfest has its own unique plan versus the other social events of the town. And then there's the communication of the information that we have in a timely way. And we learn from other people's experience, like the robocalls as well.
Councillor? Here's just as a side note on that, I was speaking to the public administration class at Seneca College today. And it's a group of 23, 24-year-olds. And because we've just gone through this exercise of making sure you communicate to people and how the best way to do it. So I took just a mini poll as what would the best way to communicate that information to these young tech-savvy people would be. And by far and away, the most popular way for something like that would have been the radio. The radio, yeah. The radio. Which I found interesting because I would not have expected that answer from that age group. So, a huge lesson learned for us is to go back to some of the tried and true. That may not be the great way, but certainly those areas. Councillor Ballard.
Thank you, and I certainly appreciate the discussion about how we communicate. And I think I've made my views known about shortcomings, especially in times of near emergencies when we're without power. The one thing that did concern me, and I was at a gathering Saturday night of Aurora residents and took an informal poll of how many people had got any communications about garbage, about power, etc. And I was concerned to see how few people had seen anything in the newspapers, including a full-page ad that we'd put in. And I hope that as we move forward, I believe it's this year we're doing a satisfaction survey that maybe we solicit from people how they like to be communicated with in times of emergency and not. There's I think far better job can be done in future. But specifically, I had a question about the communications budget, and maybe it's under maybe you've addressed this under pressures, but last year our budget was $591,000. This year the actual was $558. This year the draft is $596. So we budgeted higher. We didn't spend it all, but we're budgeting even more than the year before. I'm just wondering how that comes to be.
Mr. Garvey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's part of the cost constraint mode that we were in the latter part of 2013. We had a planned underspend, and that accounts for everything. So there were some promotional items we didn't pursue. There was some additional advertising that we did not do. So the plan is to proceed in those avenues. So,
Councillor?
That's one area. The other on page 5.5. All other expenditures accounts for next year will account for about $107,000, or about 6% of the total budget. Can you touch on that's a fair amount of money? Can you touch on what some of the key features are of all other expenditures?
Mr. Garvey.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be things like office equipment, office repairs. I'm trying to recall. I didn't bring my detailed sheets. Dan, would you have the ability to just to see what accounts are accounted for there? Mileage.
You're going to have your conferences, training, mileage, anything that is smaller than those, the variances of $10,000, $18,000 there. So we just pulled out the larger ones that were changing of any sort, and then grouped everything else as saying these are all they're either flat-lined or they're minor changes.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and some of my questions were already answered. And just a quick one, I guess. Our website was under reconstruction, and we're working on that. Any idea when we'll have a launch with the new app?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the planned launch of the new website is targeted for March, and similar timeframes for the associated applications.
Councillor? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Callow?
Just in terms of the memo that we just got, the top says corporate communications proposed 2014 advertising budget is 138, and the advertising budget in the blue pages is 172. I'm not sure if I missed something or if there's something in there that isn't in here or.
Which page in the blues, please?
That's 5.5.
Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. This is just print advertising, so there's other promotional items would be also in there. Every year we purchase a certain supply of Aurora logoed material as well.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat what Councillor Thompson said because I said the same thing last year in terms of convincing me the value to some of these, and quite frankly, I'm not convinced, but I'm going to let it stand. I'm not sure what the support around the table is to remove some of these, but I'll let it stand for now. There was one other point that I wanted to make, and it just lost. Well, if I remember, I'll let you know.
Councillor Perry.
Quickly, I wanted to ask last week, but I never did, or Saturday. What platform are we looking for at the apps? Are they going to be web-based? Are they going to be for specific operating systems? Just wondering what we're looking at for the applications.
I believe it's MS-DOS 6.22. We're getting current. I almost said that with a straight face.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the type of device that we're looking at applying, or
for the application that we'll be creating.
Yes.
Is it going to be a web-based application in that you go to a website to access it, or is it created more of a software base for different operating systems to utilize?
So the apps will be mobile-based, linking to the website. I better get back to you with from Mr. Kent, because this is...
Councillor Perry, specifically what are you referring to? You're talking about the website that's under development?
No, we're talking about specific applications that Mr. Garvey had referenced during his presentation.
The My Waste app, which is up right now, is iOS and Android.
Right. So the new ones that we're going to be working on, where you can take a picture of a pothole, as was described, is that web-based or is that software-based?
That would be the same as My Waste.
Okay.
I better have.
But that's what you're looking for, right? Is it iOS?
Is it iOS? Is it
Android?
Windows? Is it Android? What is it? That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm not clear, Councillor Perry. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Councillor Ballard?
Well, thank you. I'm concerned about the communications budget, and I would like to put an amendment to the motion on the floor that we maintain the 2013 actual budget rather than the proposed draft budget of $596. That's about a $38,000 reduction, I gather, or I see. And I'd like the resolution or the amendment to be that we propose a budget of $558,000 pending a staff report how that reduction in the proposed budget would impact communications. So in other words, if we reduce that budget by $38,000, how is that going to impact our communications program in future? Just by way of saying that, communications has to be one of the fastest growing departments. 10 years ago, the budget was nowhere near what it is today. And I'm concerned, I think as others have expressed, about whether we're getting value for our dollar. And I'd rather stop right now and say, before we spend any more money, let's look at what we're going to do with that additional $38,000. So that would be in a very lengthy, roundabout way, putting a resolution or an amendment on the table.
Could you go over your motion one more time, please?
To be brief, that the 2014 budget for communications be $559,000, and that staff report back on the impact of reducing the proposed budget from $596,000.
Everybody understand that? Is there a second? Councillor Gallo? Comments or questions? Councillor Thompson.
I agree that it'd be nice to have a few more answers, but I'd like to just keep it simple. I'd prefer just to ask Michael Kemp to come and speak to it at the next budget meeting. We have one next Monday. It's all day. It won't be much here to come. In keeping it at the 2013 actual numbers, we have to keep in mind that personnel costs are increasing. So it's not just the $38,000 reduction in advertising, it's significantly more than that. So you're actually having less dollars allocated to advertising and the things that we're doing because you cannot freeze the personnel costs. So, rather than have a motion and go through the process, we're here all day next week, just have Mr. Kemp come and speak and put that idea out and try and get some better understanding of what new ideas he proposes and why he's asking for that increase.
Other speakers? Councillor Fury.
I'm not in favor of having this budget go up and down like a yo-yo. I want more information, without a doubt. I think there are certain things taking place this year that haven't happened in the past. There's an election this year, so that will have an impact on the budget and a reason why it would have to go up by a certain amount. And we've also committed to looking at 2 referendum questions, which is going to take some communications dollars as well to get that job done. I'd just like to see sort of a presentation on a little bit more detail, break this out a little bit more. But I'm more than happy to investigate the option. But I don't think it's wise right now to start picking a number without knowing everything that goes into it. So if it's amenable to Councillor Ballard, could we split it?
I'm sorry, what was your last comment?
Could we split either the cost right now from the information? I'm not prepared to cut the budget right now, but I do want more information. So if we could split
the other thing we could do is if Councillor Ballard's motion does not pass, is we could defer this to next Monday, pending discussion with Mr. Kemp from Communications. So, Councillor Ballard?
And I'm happy with that. I always figure that if you put a number in front of people, that puts a bit more pressure on than saying just come and explain yourself. But certainly we need more details about this department and how it intends on spending that money. So I'm happy to either withdraw that motion or perhaps let's just withdraw the motion and put another on the floor that this item be deferred to our next budget meeting, and that Council receive a presentation from Communications with regards to its proposed budget.
Councillor Gallo, are you acceptable or amenable, pardon me, to withdrawing the motion? Okay, thank you. Speaking, that's my suggestion. If we defer it specifically with discussions around this, because we've already discussed most of the other. So if that's clear with Council.
And just prior to that, Mr. Mayor, I do have to call a quick point of order. We never voted on receiving this memorandum. So there was a motion put forward to receive this.
You are correct.
So we need to deal with that first.
All right, then, let's call him, because there is a motion on the floor to receive the memorandum. So if we could vote in favor of receiving the memorandum, receive and refer. Contrary? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Perry. So then the motion to defer to the 20th. Defer the communication budget to June the 20th. It was just getting so warm outside today, I was thinking summer, to January the 20th. So, Madam Clerk, can we separate the communications budget out of this? And so then it would be, Councillor Ballard, are you okay with your motion just to defer the communications budget?
Yes.
Okay. So just the communications portion. Questions, Councillor Gardner?
This may be an oral presentation, but can we have some print material to back it up? I don't want to just...
Yep. We'll see what Mr. Kemp can get together. Okay. All in favor then of deferring the communications? Speaking to the deferral, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think the deferral is a good idea. And I'm just adding that there does suggest in here that there's $19,000 in special events advertising budget that's transferring from Parks and Rec to communication, which could explain a lot of what we're seeing here in an increase. So I do appreciate Michael coming back, Mr. Kemp, and giving us that detail. And something in print would be a good idea as well.
Thank you. Okay, calling the question on the deferral. All in favor? Contrary? That's carries. And going back to the main motion now as amended. Any other questions on the rest of this item? Councillor Buck.
I don't have questions, but I do have a comment I want to make. I'm not going to support this budget. I'm not in favor of this membership in the Excellence Institute. I think the last time I saw a figure for that was $10,000. I'm not in favor of the $8,500 for advertising in the Blades of Grass and the Sport Aurora. So that's $20,000. I'm not in favor of the $8,000 we approved in the council budget for the Business Achievement Awards. That's pretty well $30,000. That nothing in the economy has hindered us from putting any of this stuff in the budget, although it hindered us from providing councillors with an increase in salary, and this amount of money would, of course, provide an increase in salary without having any impact on the taxpayers at all. That's my comment on that. And then I ask this is a perennial question for me, and never get an answer, but the human resources in here, where can I find in the town's budget a tally of the severance packages that have been paid out to employees in this term and the last? I don't need a tally, actually. I need a list. I would like to see a list of the severance packages that have been paid out to employees who've had their employment terminated for one reason or another. Where can I find it? I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm directing that question to Mr. Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the actual costs that have been incurred with respect to that particular item land in the budgets from the departments where those departures occurred, and they have occurred over a period of time. You're asking for a listing to be compiled over the course of the last 8 years. I think that is something that could be done, and not overnight, but I think it's something that could be done, should council wish it to be done, but it would need to be brought, of course, to a closed session of council, if you're wishing to have names attached to them.
Well, I wouldn't be asking for any names, Mr. Mayor. I just want to know what it has cost us, and it would be 7 years. And if you want a resolution for that, I'm happy to move it.
Well, I would just...
Or if it's information, I'm just asking for information. I think it's a logical question to ask, especially at this time.
It's not really a budget issue per se, so perhaps a separate resolution, Councillor Buck?
Right, but I keep asking. Well, Mr. Elliott says he can do it. I would like to see it if anybody else wants to see it.
Well, he did say it would take him a bit of time to do. He did say it would take him a bit of time to do.
Well, I don't mind waiting.
So what I'm hearing is that we have time for you to do a resolution.
Right.
Any other comments, Councillor Buck?
No.
Thank you. In that case, calling the...
think so.
I'm sorry? In that case, I'll call the vote on the motion as amended. All in favor, please. Contrary? That is carried. Thank you. And the last one that we would like to get to tonight is Mr. Elliott with the Corporate and Financial Services, and that would be tab 8, please. You can do it. I got faith. Tab 8. Monsieur Elliott, any comments between Saturday and today?
No, sir. I think that the budgetary numbers were fairly. I tried to lay them out as succinctly as I could in the white presentation sheets. The base efficiency reductions and the base pressures. They're all set out. I think you can see that there's very little in here where I can actually have influence and control. I've got a reduction in revenue which reflects our actuals of 2013, the economic changes, the fewer and fewer tax certificates and the statements that we're being asked to produce, and we've eliminated a one-time cost, and a net reduction of all of our telecom mobility data is there, and all other line reductions are $4,200. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on any items in the whites or in the blues, but generally it's a status quo and in my opinion a very shrewd budget.
Could I have someone put the motion on the floor, please? Councillor Abel, thank you. Councillor Gartner, second. Speakers. Councillor Gallo.
So I'll ask my standard question. When I compare the 2014 draft budget to the 2013 actuals, I get, well, if we compare 2014 draft budget to 2013 budget, it's a 2.4% increase. When I compare it to actuals, it's actually a 5.3% increase, and it's 143,000 over what is your increase of 2.4. If you could help me understand that.
Mr. Elliott.
If I'm not mistaken, what you're seeking is an explanation for why my 2013s were less than 2013 budget, because that would explain most of it. My whites have explained the change between 13 budget and 14 budget. I do see, though, that lower on that page, on page 8.4, pretty much all of those accounts, you can see where the The software maintenance and support, for example, we budgeted 230 in 12, 213, 235, 233, and in 14 we're budgeting 272 because we do have some new software licenses that have come on. It's zero-based up, so I have an increase on the 2014 right there on software. On my telecom, again, budgeted 203. The actuals are estimated about 184. We've had some savings, but then we have some cost increase over those savings, so we're now rebudgeting at 192. So we've adjusted based on our experience, based on our knowledge of what's going on in the industry. Software licenses, again, we had some increases there, but we've adjusted back based on what we believe is happening this year. We've, again, made sure that we're not over budgeting for software licenses, and so we've set the budget at 130 this year. Contracts and consulting, if you look at the two lines together, there was some swapping of dollars there, and perhaps it's a miscoding of invoices as between contracts or consulting, but very similar kind of work. And so generally you can see that if you add those two together, they're pretty much 2013 budget was 133.8 and the actuals were 132.1, and we're budgeting pretty much right at that same level again. Courses and seminars, as a result of the general constraints that we applied across the board, we underspent that budget, but we continue to require IT courses and seminars. We've toned it back because we had a special in there for last year, which we did spend, and we don't have to spend on that special this year, and so we've knocked it back by $2,000. And all of the other expenditures are pretty much in line, but we took the budget, saw the actual, and reduced where we could. Councillor?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, where would I find the not sure how to describe this, but the loss of revenue by, not sure what the technical term is, but delinquent taxpayers. Where would I find that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, an interesting question. Delinquent taxpayers actually earn us more money than if we collected it, because when we have a taxpayer who doesn't pay their taxes on time, they're charged a penalty and interest rate, which is set as a ceiling by the province, which we've adopted by bylaw, approximates almost a 15% interest rate on those unpaid taxes, and that's to encourage them to collect, because we have no way of withholding services realistically from an individual taxpayer in town. So we use the punitive interest rate as a means to encourage payment on time. If they pay on time, I turn around and I invest that, and I earn 2.7 maybe in the market. And so delinquent tax earns us penalty revenue. We do not lose taxation revenue because of unpaid accounts. They ultimately get paid through the sale of their property if necessary. And we're almost at that stage with one property here in town. So there is no loss for failure to collect taxes. We do have a line item in the corporate expenses item area for taxation assessment adjustments. And that's where somebody appeals their assessment gets reduced, and we rightfully reduce their taxes. And that comes as a line item, approximately $180,000, I believe, is the line item there.
So in terms of, through you, and that's a great answer, but in terms of, have we, and if we are, would you be advising us that when, or if there was ever a point where that number is high enough for us to be alerted, because we're obviously, clearly we have expenses and we rely on people to pay their taxes, and maybe more so on the corporate side or on the commercial side as opposed to the residential side, those numbers can become really big really fast.
Certainly, through a change in the economy, we can quickly see an increase in our taxation penalty and interest revenue line item, because that's billed each month for delinquent accounts. Every month the interest is added and it's recorded in our books. We see it happening, and we see it in our quarterly analysis on year-to-date forecasting. And so we can see the economy is turning down, we're not seeing as much collection. We're seeing increased tax penalty revenue. But again, it does not cost us cash. It costs us cash, but it does not cost us dollars. As I said, it actually increases our revenue on the books. Fortunately, the town's current tax arrears as a percent of levy is one of our KPIs that I've included in the blue pages there for you, and it's well within...
Do we know what that is right now?
It's approximately 6.8. I'm sorry, it's not in the blue pages, it was in my whites. And tax receivable as a percent of levy is, for 2014, we're shooting for 6.5. Right now, we're ended 2013 at 6.63, and the GTA average, based on the BMA study, is about 6.8.
Do you know what that equals in dollars through you, Mr. Mayor?
It's approximately, I think it's about 2.5. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I don't know the dollars. Off the top of my head,
Okay. That's fine.
I thought the suggestion was going to be we should encourage everyone not to pay because our revenues would go up.
Then we'd have to borrow money to pay for everything.
Yeah, it could be a law of diminishing returns there.
You'd borrow money at a much lesser rate than you're earning on the outstandings. I've long argued, and it's not a facetious statement. We talk about yields on investment portfolio, and as the treasurer, I'm paid to do two things. One is to collect taxes and revenues of the town, and yet the flip side of my job portfolio is to optimize revenues to the town. Well, if I optimized revenues, I would not collect my tax, because in my investment portfolio, I should include tax receivables as an investment. It's really backwards thinking, and unfortunately, it's a reality of the municipal business.
Just as a final, typically, and maybe this one example, you can give me a sense, from the start of not paying taxes to the point of the corporation selling that property to recoup the taxes, how long is that?
It's nearly 4.25 years if everything was on track and on time. A municipality may take action where we can register a tax arrears certificate against a property if a property owes us taxes in respect of 3 prior calendar years of tax. And so if they want to save, all they have to do is pay off that oldest year at the last minute. Once we issue the tax arrears certificate... Well, I do, because I share the rules of the game with anybody that's in these circumstances, because the last thing they want and the last thing I want is their house to be sold out from under them. And so we often are working in that regard. However, unfortunately, some people's circumstances, they find that they're unable to pay simply. We register the tax arrears certificate. Once that drops on title, they have 1 year to pay the account in full in a singular payment, as at the time of payment. And should they fail to do that, at the conclusion of the 1 year period, the town has the opportunity to auction that property or list it for tender by sealed bid. And we are not obligated to recover market value. We're simply obligated to recover at least the amount outstanding on the tax. But we sell it, we must sell it to the highest price we can acquire.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Elliott. Similar question to what Councillor Gallo raised. On 8-4, the line that has to do with information technology / communications in the second box, it shows that our 2012 actuals were 1.5. We budgeted a higher amount. 2013 actuals, again, come in at 1.5. And we're still budgeting about $250,000 higher than what the actuals are. When I flip over to 8-11, which breaks it down, to me, really, it's all in personnel costs. The 2012 personnel costs were $950. The 2013 costs appear to be $950, and yet we're raising it almost 20%. Is that because we're not fully staffed, or what is the rationale for that?
Mr. Elliott?
We have, unfortunately, we've been working through trying to restructure that group and refill some vacancies. Last December, we lost 2 database administrators almost within a week of each other, and that set us back. We took the opportunity to fill the void on an interim basis with a contract, and so you that's where some of the contract money went, while we tried to restructure and figure out what we could do with those two positions. We have just this past week, we filled the second one. We filled the first one fairly early, mid-year last year. We brought in Mr. Henry Zhu as our database administrator, and this week we've appointed an existing staff member of our IT group to the other position. And so now I have another vacancy. So it's a case of open vacancies for approved positions. It also has been contributing, unfortunately, to our workload that group is facing. But we are not asking for new staff in there this year. We hope to have full staffing resolved within 2 months now, because we now have the security position open.
Yes, sir.
My second question really, again, around that whole tax receivable as a percentage of levy. You did state that our 6.5 is within the norm in some of the other municipalities that you looked at. But I would be interested at some point to understand how perhaps some of the other ones out there are trying different or innovative ways to try and bring that number down, because I get it that we're within the norm, but obviously you always have best practices. And so you don't necessarily have to answer that one at this time, but it would be something of interest, I'm sure, for all of us to understand what other municipalities, if anything, can else be done to help attract that or recover that money.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I think I can answer that right now, because we have associations that are dedicated to the business of tax and tax administration, tax collection. Generally throughout the province, because of the 15% yield on those tax receivables and the efforts required to increase the collection rate, if you were, we already issue arrears notices. Some municipalities do it every month. We do it every month as well. Some municipalities will do it immediately after a due date in a month where there's a payment, as well as at the end of the month. Their percentages don't seem to be any different. Some municipalities have engaged collection agencies in the second and third year. They don't seem to show a whole lot of difference in their numbers, but at the same time you're incurring additional costs which add to the bottom line, but you're not increasing revenues. In fact, you're decreasing revenues because now you're not collecting as much interest. It's a backwards equation. The more I spend to reduce that number, actually it costs me even more than what it cost me in those efforts. And so generally speaking, the tax administration areas focus on doing the taxation, doing all of the adjustments and appeals and everything else that's dealing with MPAC, the supplementary billings, and staying on top of that and answering all of the inquiries that go with it. To staff, in addition to that, a specified person, you almost need a dedicated individual who's going to chase down delinquent accounts. And quite frankly, it's not necessary when we have the hammer of, by the way, we can sell your house. So if you administer that program well, you maintain it pretty much at about that 6% level.
And I appreciate having that historical data, and it kind of leads me to my final one, which is, I know that on our website, specifically on your department's website, we have forms for the rebate of property taxes for vacancies in commercial and industrial buildings. And I think, you brought a report, I believe, earlier or late in 2013, and mentioned the Sobeys Plaza as being one of them that would have applied for it. But I think it would be good information to understand what historically that number has been that our commercial and industrial building or property owners have sought over the years as a key performance indicator with regards to vacancies or the economic development of the town. I just think it's a good business number to look at, and it gives us an indication somewhat. I know about all buildings are different valuations and stuff, but with regards to, that lost revenue because they're not fully occupied, because they are vacant, because nothing's happening with them. So, perhaps in future that may be something that you can provide or track for us.
Certainly, I'll make note of that and see what we can add to our KPI index.
Other speakers? Mr. Elliott, you talked about moving forward on the U-building. Can you give us a sense of where that sits, specifically with respect to the automatic water meter reading, where that project is, how it's coming along?
With respect to the water meter report, you'll see something very soon. We were talking about that at dinner time tonight with Director Simonauskas and Mr. Garvey. e-billing is something that I see happening, perhaps getting into place for during the fall of 2014. We've got a number of initiatives that group is busy with, in particular the HRIS payroll project. And then I believe that we can put the ducks in a row for e-billing for both tax and water, perhaps as early as January, if not January 5th, 2015, if not somewhat prior to that. There's a number of opportunities and options in there that need to be evaluated for cost effectiveness and uptake. Canada Post, of course, with e-Post is quick to suggest that that's their golden solution to everything. I'm not convinced yet. I don't believe the uptake for e-Post is quite what they say it is. So it's a project that I've got slated for the second half of 2014, which will start up in Q2, but we're going to intensify it and hope to have solutions for council ready to launch for the new year.
Thank you. You've got a section in report services that we provide, and I guess probably a couple of months ago I saw the project list that the manager of IT services has, and I would think kind of a general discussion or maybe a general memo on that to council would be beneficial to council to get a sense of some of the work that they have on their plate, and because it also highlights the amount, the more and more that we're relying on information services and IT, which drives a lot of our costs, and it sometimes helps to get a sense of what's actually going on behind those doors over there. So perhaps sometime in the next couple of months, if you could put something like that together, that may be beneficial.
Certainly. It won't take us long because we already have our 2014 work plan detailed project by project by quarters. And so I think we recently brought an information report on our successes of 2013 and how we were doing, but I think it's important also to look ahead at what the projects are for 14 that are on the deck. And it will amaze some, and others will say, as I expected, very busy.
Indeed. Other comments or questions for Mr. Elliott? Okay, he's calling the vote. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, Council, we need a motion to recess to 9 o'clock on Monday, January. I keep wanting to move that out. No, sir. So, yes, 9 o'clock in the morning. Councillor Buck, thank you. Second? Councillor Abel? All in favor? Contrary? That's carried. Thank you very much, staff.